Greetings, Montana, and greetings, world. This is Chris Hislop from the Montana World Affairs Council. Welcome to our inaugural International Careers Week. All week from 8:30 to 2 o'clock, we're going to be bringing you an extraordinary array of international expertise from here in Montana and from around the world to help participants understand what's going on out there and how can you become part of it if you have an interest in an international career. And we are extremely happy to kick off today's event with a good friend and longtime partner, Director Scott Osterman, the director of the Montana Department of Commerce. Scott is a North Central Montana native whose roots date back to an 1860s miner's cabin on Helena's Last Chance Gulch and an 1880s homestead in the Missouri Breaks. More recently, he's served as Senior Director of Business Unit Operations at Applied Materials in Kalispell. Over the course of his 30-year career, Osterman has served as a senior executive in Fortune 500 companies and venture startups in the semiconductor, automobile, and high-tech hardware and software industries. His broad experience in business includes strategic planning, rapid growth initiatives, operations, sales, market development, and turnaround execution. And I'm going to add to that list a great partner to the Montana World Affairs Council in several of our programs. Scott, welcome to the program. How are you?
Hi, Chris. Good morning. It's great to be here on this bright and early this morning, and to really celebrate what you guys do at the Montana World Affairs Council. You all are also a great partner of ours in helping us meet international delegations and make arrangements that would not have been possible without your help and partnership here in Montana.
Well, we couldn't be happier to have you here, Mr. Director. As you say, we've got a long-time partnership. I think this is a really great way to kick things off because it does help people understand how important the world is to Montana and Montana is to the world. I was talking to the director earlier and said, interestingly, in the hundreds of programs we've done around the state, one of the most common questions from students is, how do you get the job that you have? And so we're bringing you this Careers Week to help students understand that. We're bringing this with the generous support of the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, Allegiance, First Interstate Bank, Trail West Bank, QFI, High Stakes Foundation, and the Longview Foundation. So, Director Osterman, let's kick things off. I want to start by saying that a couple of years ago, my colleague Nikki and I had the pleasure of going to Helena to meet with your colleagues at Department of Commerce and Department of Agriculture. And not surprisingly, I got a real education in Montana's connections to the world, which are extensive, deep, and long-standing. So I'm hoping you might give us a little insight on that. And then also kind of, what students might want to know about you and your job, the different things that you've done around the world, and looking at state government. So over to you.
Well, thank you again, Chris, for the invitation. It's a great opportunity to share what we're doing here in Montana and the experiences that I've had, very fortunately over the last 40 some odd years. Currently, I'm the Director of Commerce for the state of Montana, and one of the things that we definitely know, as you just stated, is Montana is on the map, and it doesn't take necessarily just a TV show to do that. Montana has long been on the map, and I'll be able to go through some really exciting things that people don't really even know about in terms of our international relationships here in Montana, and how we all interact with them in many different walks of life. Montana is relatively remote compared to a lot of other states, let's say, but it's less, and many people thought, yeah, it's less accessible. There isn't as much trade, there isn't as much everything else. But the fact is even through the pandemic, one of the things that actually Zoom that we're on today really promoted was the ability to transcend the travel requirement, and we became much closer. And so while travel was curtailed, I'll just say that in the last 2 years, we've seen other types of international cooperation develop just because of this technology and the more immediacy of being able to build relationships rather than to wait for meetings and that sort of thing. Now that the world has opened up, I'll go into some things that we've done just here at the Department of Commerce in the last year that are really exciting to be able to then, combine the technologies that we have as well as the relationships that we're building to benefit Montana and all of our citizens. At the Department of Commerce, we have a multiple amount of international jobs and related jobs and opportunities. In my position, I have the opportunity to meet diplomats from all over the world to discuss the things that are on their mind as they interface with both Montana and the United States. We welcome people from Ireland, Germany, India, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Sri Lanka, Australia, and more. I mean, that's just in the last 2 years here. And so it's a quite exciting opportunity to then, in those discussions, talk about trade, cultural exchanges, education, tourism. On our teams, we have to have a pretty broad team to be able to have those types of discussions here. And so in my experience, I think it's, I have the benefit of being able to interface in all of those arenas. And I'll give you a few examples as we go through the presentation today, of things that are even just happening this week in Montana relative to international relationships. For example, on our team, we have a chief protocol officer, and that job is an international trade officer, and that job really advises the governor and other agencies on visit protocols and customs and briefing data for all of these meetings to build a base level of understanding. So when we sit down with the diplomat and we're talking about things, and we need to understand the context in which Montana and the topics that we're talking to them about in trade or other relationships, where they're coming from. And in order to be able to get that level of understanding and then negotiate or create relationships that expand, our business opportunities and likewise. So the trade data and promoting Montana industries depends on these international relationships. And so it's a matter of having both the opportunity and the respect of knowing this is that we're relatable, I guess, that we're not just not knowing about this culture or this country. So the best advice that I can give is you have to become a student of the country, at least enough to be able to then understand where they're coming from. In addition to that position, we have our export team, and our export team works with over 3,000 Montana companies and aids them in a lot of different ways. They provide export and trade requirement expertise. I mean, things like, no one woke up this morning wanting to know about harmonic, trade, these harmonic codes and all these things that you have to put on transfer documents and those types of things, but they're vital in order to be able to know exactly how to get it through customs and those things. So our team helps Montana companies do that. They help secure transactions and also give them the protocol understandings. They also carry the sponsorship, if you will, and we provide grants for companies to go to international trade shows, and we conduct international trade shows. Just in the next 2 weeks, we have a trade show that is outdoors and sportsman oriented and in Germany. And we have 11 companies coming to the Montana booth in Nuremberg, Germany. And so obviously there's not only is there the exchange that goes on here in Montana, now that team is out working to promote those companies in Germany and Europe. Just in the last year, we've had trade missions to Romania, Poland, Japan, et cetera. And so we look forward to these things expanding as time goes on. And we had an outbound trade mission last fall and to Japan. And in Japan, we have a sister state relationship with Kumamoto. And that relationship, we celebrated the 40th anniversary and had a state dinner basically with the governor of Kumamoto and his team. And that Kumamoto is in the south of Japan, and celebrated that 40 years of exchange between the state of Montana officially and the state of Kumamoto. We have sister state relationships and sister city relationships throughout Montana. And I think this is really important, again, for just the cultural exchange, because from that exchange, opportunities are created. So we've got offices in Taiwan and Japan. We have trade offices there, and maybe most people don't necessarily know that. And our staff there, they put tourism and education exchange, and they represent us to the government officials that are there on a day-to-day basis. And our tourism office works with key countries with high volume visitation, including international trade shows, to promote Montana. So not only, again, is this activity happening in Montana, it's happening internationally when we participate in events out there. And lastly, our Business Montana and Business Attraction team partners with all of these people that I've just mentioned about, and other organizations like yours, like the Montana World Trade Center, et cetera, and with universities and pretty much anyone in Montana to really promote foreign direct investment. A great example of that is a company called Nippon. Nippon invested in Montana in 1967. It's a Japanese company. They had a vision of wanting access to high quality winter wheat for the making of pasta in Japan. And in 1967, an elevator was built north of Great Falls, and that has blossomed into a significant investment, as Montana wheat is really a primary export to Japan. And Nippon has expanded to run a company now and own a company called Pasta Montana, which exports huge amounts of finished product to Asia as well, from essentially a Japanese company operating in Montana. So that's just I think a smattering of all of the different things that we do. We have other relationships that we work with commonly between other partners in the federal government, et cetera, that for example, Select USA is an international trade fair that essentially promotes trade within and foreign direct investment within Montana, and several of our people join others throughout the state to go to that program, and it's usually in Washington D.C. or the surrounding area. Again, this is all relating to international relationships. So, prior to coming to the Department of Commerce, I've been doing this for 2 years. I've worked in the semiconductor industry, automotive, high tech, and as you said, but more importantly, I've had the privilege to work with customers and employees, suppliers and vendors and distributors in over 40 countries in these past years. And the greatest lesson and the opportunity that I've learned is people are different in many ways, but those are customary things. But generally speaking, everyone wants to accomplish the same thing. And so meet them where they are, understand and celebrate the cultural differences. And when you can do that, that's when real business gets done. The barriers are laid down, and different is not wrong. I mean, I think we have a little bit of an ethnocentric way sometimes internationally to be able to say, well, that's a little strange. I don't know if I like that or not, but it could be commonplace there. So the best opportunity in the international world is to understand what's common and not make judgment on it, and be very sincere. The biggest thing is to be genuine and curious, to celebrate those differences and understand how and why they do the things they do. Could be something as simple as a holiday that we've never even heard of. And just understanding that gives you a point of being curious and allowing people to educate you about their culture. They want to tell you as much about their country as you want to tell them about Montana. And believe me, they're curious about Montana just because what they've seen on TV and the fact that they know that there's unbounded beauty here, and it's a huge state. So they have great curiosity, and that's what gives you a great foundation to do great business. There's also things about context. When you're traveling in Japan, it's a high context culture. Right? Everything means something. And respecting that as opposed to being casual about it, it's extremely important to building relationships because it's in their context. When you're in their country, it's in their context. And that is, the first company I worked for was a Japanese company way back in my early career. And it was run very traditionally as a Japanese company, but understanding the context was here in the United States, but understanding that context gave me a great opportunity to really learn about the Japanese culture, learn how to work with them, learn how to negotiate with them, and to make great progress. And that's treated me well my entire life. In Japan, greetings and introductions are super critical. The depth that you bow is very meaningful relative to the position of the other person. Handshaking is not always happening, right? Depends on a lot of different things. Wait to be offered your hand. And I know I'm maybe going a little bit far afield, but the cultural differences a little bit are the things that make international interactions the most interesting to me. Exchanging cards has a protocol. You exchange card with one hand or with two hands. Formal meals have a special spacing, and you just don't sit anywhere. It's very controlled and important to them. Gifting is important. Even how you wrap a gift and the type of gift and the methodology in which it's given. So those are all things that we're not accustomed to. We're much more casual here in the U.S. many times. But honoring that also gives you a special opportunity to understand you're traveling there or them here, and then begin essentially the basis of a human interpersonal relationship. Because I can tell you, understanding the lingua franca, the way that business and relationships are done in any and every international opportunity that you have will get you much further. And it doesn't matter what type of business you're in. You can be an engineer. You can be, I've had the opportunity to work in manufacturing and product development and patents and those types of things. I've had offices in Hong Kong and in Germany, and the opportunity to then work with those people there and build relationships with those employees and friends really is the ultimate, I think, that benefit of working internationally. Is I've had this privilege, and I could say that as I travel and have traveled internationally, I've developed great and deep and long friendships that have lasted and transcended jobs and transcended time, et cetera. And one of my dearest friends and his family, our families have sort of grown up knowing about each other for the last 40 some odd years. And just in Japan, to be able to meet him and his family and and celebrate that long-term relationship. When the first time I met him, he didn't understand. He had come just to the United States. He had been here 2 days, and he didn't know the difference other than counting between a $1 bill and a $5 bill. So it started with that basic understanding of here's where we are, here's what we do, and to a really lifelong loving relationship and deep friendship that just can't be replaced. So to me, that's the ultimate benefit of working in an international career: the excitement and the curiosity and the opportunity to find and learn about new things. It's a constant learning process, and that's my message to anyone listening is you can have an international career in Montana and not even leave Montana, or you can have an international career in virtually just about any field. If you're if you're a dancer, you can work with the Rocky Mountain Ballet, right? They have international exchanges all the time. If you're an engineer, you can be in product development and that sort of thing. So it's whether you choose to engage and jump into those opportunities is really the choice. It's because the world is much smaller today. I can tell you that it was my first plane trip to Europe was I was still in high school, the same age that many people here. But you had to stop in either Iceland or Greenland or Baffin Island in order to refuel the plane, because the planes didn't go that far way back when from the West Coast here. So that's I would say we've really come a long ways, at least in my lifetime, to be able to have day-to-day relationships internationally. This, in this next coming week, I'm going to have conversations with people from Kyrgyzstan and with people from Taiwan and Japan, and those types of things just go on a day-to-day basis. So it's just as common today as it is talking to somebody from Wyoming or Idaho. And so I'm excited about what Montanans can do in the marketplace. We do have that unique position in the world of being a place that many people aspire to visit and want to understand, and that's a great jumping off spot to be a great representative for the state of Montana, and to build our relationships and our values in a way that people can appreciate who we are and what we do.
Scott, thank you so much for that. I want to say I especially appreciate your thoughts on cultural understanding and curiosity and kind of reaching out there and as being a kind of central element to this entire discussion. I couldn't agree with you more. I want to share with you a very quick story, and I'm going to ask for yours, so I'll give you a little time to think. But I think when we speak with students around the state, sometimes it can feel a bit daunting, this engagement with the world, because it is different, as you say. People have different cultures and different ways, and it can be a bit frightening to think, well, what if I make a mistake? How am I going to navigate? But those of us who've enjoyed an international career have, just baskets full of funny stories. Here's one, which is, you mentioned Kyrgyzstan. I lived in Kyrgyzstan for a couple of years, and there in Kyrgyzstan, if you're the honored guest at the dinner table, you get to eat the sheep's head, actually, including the eyes, which at the first go, you don't want to offend your hosts, and so you have to do your very best. But of course, your hosts understand that you are also from a different culture, and you're coming and doing your very best to honor them and to be a part of their table and to be a part of their culture. And so I've had the experience of eating a few sheep's eyeballs in my time, and I've learned a lot from that. But Scott, you've had a very distinguished career in the private sector. You're now working for us in our state capital. I'm sure you also have interesting stories about how when you were in a certain place, a certain thing happened. Is there anything that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of, you're right. And I kind of left this one because I thought you might ask about it. The differences in food and the whole protocol surrounding food is very cultural and very, very interesting. And you just have to be respectful. Sometimes but also be adventurous and just be kind and polite. And if there's something that you just can't do, then don't do it. But I'll give you one example. I have a dear friend that I got to know working through business very well, and I was in Osaka, in the Osaka, Japan area, and told him I was coming by and we should get together. So he says, "Oh, I have this great place. Let's go to dinner." And so off we go, and some little kind of 3 stories up, hole in the wall, and we have the opportunity to go in, and Kenji is he's ordering, all of these different things one after the other. And finally this last one shows up, and we've had a great time enjoying each other's company and talking about he was in a transition in his career and what his plans were and how I could help him, et cetera. And he goes, "Oh, this is my favorite." And so in comes this nice big bowl. It smells good and everything else like that. Well, it was raw chicken. And of all of the things in America that you don't eat is raw chicken, right? And so I looked at it and I thought, okay, he eats this all the time. So there are probably microbes in his system that kind of, handles it. I didn't know whether mine would or not, but such a dear friend, there's no way I was going to insult him and say, "No, I'm not eating that." So I have to tell you, once I got past the texture, it tasted really good. The meal went on, and obviously I'm here to live to tell the tale. Most everyone is horrified, when I tell that story here in the US, but it gave me the opportunity. And here's the sidebar to this, is it gave me the opportunity to have this discussion with him and say, this is something that would just never happen in America. And how is it that, with all of the different salmonella and everything else like that, it's associated with chicken and eggs and all that stuff in our food supply chain. What is it? So I learned about the specialty farm that raises these chickens, and it's not something I could ever do anything with, but it's understanding the entire context of the supply chain and everything that went into making that safe piece of chicken that sat in my bowl. And he was delighted to be able to tell me that whole story, right? Because he had enough international relationships with within the US that it became, he knew that story was important to us. And so I could tell you, 10 of those different, stories, right? In Kyrgyzstan, yes, there's sheep's heads and there's horse and there's everything else that we don't necessarily eat here, but it's commonplace there. And I can tell you that from my visit to Kyrgyzstan last fall, there's no way you can ever go hungry.
That is for sure. Absolutely. I mean, that's a great story, Scott. Thanks for sharing that. And I don't want to stretch the analogy too far, but you said if you can get past the texture and then things are good. I think that's broadly speaking, the way it is oftentimes with our international engagements. If you get past that initial kind of reluctance or differences, then you get into something really interesting. As you say, you get past the chicken into this incredible discussion about the way things work. And that's how we learn. And that's how we create these contacts. Scott, you and many of our participants this week are in a very unique position, given your careers and your positions now, to have a very good sense of what's happening now, but also to have a kind of look into the future. And this is a question to you to support our students who are middle school, high school, and some university students will be watching this, to think about what kinds of skills and abilities should students be thinking about now if they are interested in these kinds of careers. What would be your advice?
I think there are multiple avenues to pursue from an academic perspective, in terms of whether it's engineering, a science related, a STEM related field, whether it's political science or a business related field. Every part of any organization that operates internationally has someone, in various different fields. So I would say, I mean, when you consider Montana has just engaged with our export team, there's over 3,000 companies in Montana that are doing export. That's a pretty significant number. And I would say take your chosen field, whatever that is, but then add on to it, add on the cultural understanding. Take a language if you don't have one. Work towards understanding what international relationships are all about, and be a student of what's going on in the world today. There's a huge shift, even in how other companies are looking at investing today, and being aware of that is, I think, really important. So you do have to be a student of what's happening every day. We're learning every day. We're watching new relationships. We're watching the world now, trying to figure out, okay, what do we do with balloons flying over Montana, and what does that mean internationally, and in the context of what's going on here? And I would say Montana has, because of our cost structures, our openness, our agricultural business, and our growing high tech sectors in photonics and biotech and other things like that, we have a growing international economy that preparing oneself for that is a broad-based approach. So you have to become a student of either a region, an area, or multiple areas, and then reach into it. Find out when there are cultural exchanges, or when there are opportunities in your city or town that you live in to see people from those countries, get engaged. And it could be something where somebody's coming for an educational or a cultural exchange, and just even listening to a speech or something. So it's as simple as that. We do have the internet, and not everything you see on the internet is true, but there's a lot of good information on there that you can educate yourself on. So you have to be intentional. It's not going to happen by accident, I guess, is what I'm going to say. So, but any type of career choice can have an international element to it anymore. It's not as limited as it was when I first started having my international experiences.
I think that's great advice, and it reflects the state of the world today, where our interconnections are much closer, much more immediate, much more common. And so students who have an interest, let's say, in business, can very easily have a kind of internationalist career, but living here in Montana or somewhere else, because our business is globalized now, as you've described here in Montana. Our agriculture, mining, tourism, you name it, we're living in a very globalized economy.
Right.
So I want to thank you very much, Director Osterman, for joining us on this inaugural kind of kicking off International Careers Week for students around Montana and around the world, for that matter. I'll quickly thank our very generous sponsors at the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation: Allegiance, First Interstate Bank, Trail West Bank, QFI, High Stakes Foundation, and the Longview Foundation. Now, for those who are watching this, know that we've got an extraordinary array of international expertise coming your way all week, Monday through Thursday, 8:30 until 2 o'clock. Coming up today later at 9:30, we've got Craig Kenjemi talking about opening doors through the Arabic language. We're going to welcome General Wesley Clark, former Supreme Allied Commander, Europe and NATO. We get international journalist Matt Volz and the executive director of the Marine and Mike Mansfield Foundation, Dina Mansour, later today. Wow. And to have it kick off with you, Director Osterman, we really appreciate it. Any final closing remarks for our students looking to engage in the world?
I would just say that, Montana has a place in the world, and the people in Montana, I think, have have a growing place in the world like we've never seen before. And so I would just encourage them to jump in, be all in to building our relationships in the world, but also building our Montana economy and making this place the unique and world-class state that we really are. And you know, I think the potential is here, and it's within the students that are going to be watching this. It's not within intrinsically the state itself. The people are the ones that make the difference, and they're going to be the ones that make the difference in our future.
Well, that's great advice from Scott Osterman, the Director of the Department of Commerce here at the state of Montana. Director Osterman, thank you once again. Thank you, everybody, for participating and those who are viewing on YouTube. More to come all week. Thanks again. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.